Thank you. Last but not least, we have Hans Larsen. Hans oversees all the activities and the engineering and maintenance service division as the public works director, from infrastructure and public utilities to traffic signal modernization and the state-of-the-art public transportation stations and plaza. Prior to joining the city of Fremont in 2013 as the city engineer and assistant director of public works department, Hans worked for the city of San Jose for 30 years in public works and transportation as their director of transportation from 2009 through 2015. With that being said, I like us to lead this over to Leah.
All right. Hi, everybody. Let me double check. Are folks seeing some slides up that are bright blue and everything look okay there?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Great. I'm going to go ahead and put it in full screen. Okay. Super. Hopefully that's a little bit bigger now. Great. My name is Leah Shea, and thank you so much, Diana, first for the introduction. Big thanks to SVBC for, first of all the work you do, for inviting me and having this conversation. Maybe just a little bit of more background I'll share that might be relevant is that I've been running the nonprofit Vision Zero Network, which I'm speaking on behalf of today, for about 9 years. But before that, I worked in San Francisco and was running a group called the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. So in many ways, very similar, I think, to much of the advocacy, not exactly, but I think a lot of overlap with the advocacy that you all are doing here. And really just want to say thank you. The work happening around the country and around the Bay Area would not be happening without really strong advocacy. So thank you for all you do, and really happy to be a part of this. So I'm just going to set the stage. I'm really excited to hear, particularly from Hans and Jesse, about their experiences, and then really to get into the questions and the discussion. But I thought I would share a little bit. You know, I'm going to say I think folks are probably generally familiar with Vision Zero. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the what real quickly, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on where are we seeing the most meaningful change. And I'd say, especially for a city like San Jose, like San Francisco, and like many others, or a handful of others, have been at this for a while. What do we really think is most important and most needed to really make progress in what is a very, very ambitious goal? And I would say the right goal, but very ambitious goal. Quickly, I'm going to start with a little bit of background. Let's see, am I going to be able to work that? There we go. We are a nonprofit. Vision Zero Network's a nonprofit. VisionZeroNetwork.org is our website. And what we do, again, is really helping communities around the country. So we're US focused, have connections to each other. What can we learn from each other? What can San Jose learn from Fremont? Learn from, I don't know, Minneapolis, learn from Charlotte, North Carolina. How do we help each other? We do this through things like webinars and resources. So check out our website, you can learn more. But just to let you guys know, I'm still based in the Bay Area. I'm just about an hour north of San Francisco now. So my heart is very much in the work that we're all doing here in the Bay Area. So Vision Zero, as you probably know, is the goal of zero traffic deaths or severe injuries. So both deaths and severe injuries among all road users, whether you're driving, walking, biking, in a wheelchair, on a scooter, in a moped, everybody, everything, every which way. I want to really start with this. Vision Zero is not just a slogan. I mean, I just said what it was, right? Sure, it's a little bit of a tagline, but it's more than a tagline, more than a slogan, more than even a program. It is fundamentally different. And that's what I really want to focus on, is the differences. And really on the part, I like to call it the paradigm shift. And we're hearing others, US Department of Transportation's even acknowledging, to really be leaning into Vision Zero and doing it strongly and appropriately and effectively. It really needs to be that bigger shift. It's not just a matter of trying harder or caring more about safety, right? We all work really hard. All the city staff and all the agencies work really hard. They care about safety. How are we actually prioritizing the things that are most effective? And part of that is change. It is a shift. And I pulled this quote. I thought it'd be good. Oops, funny little paragraph thing. This is a quote from the US Department of Transportation that describes that Vision Zero is the goal, and a safe system, developing a safe system is how we get there. And I like this quote. Sorry, it's a little funky here, I see now, but the quote is, "This is a shift from a conventional safety approach," and really thinking about, it focuses on just, we used to focus more on kind of the human mistakes. What are we doing wrong? And instead, Vision Zero is really focusing on the system. How are the streets designed? How are vehicles designed? I know that may not be our job sitting here today, but we need to think about it. How are vehicles designed? How are policies set in a systemic, safe way so that when we do make mistakes, which we will, people are people, right? We're going to make mistakes sometimes. How are the systems really helping those mistakes not be fatal or severe injuries? So I won't go through again. I didn't want to spend too much time on the what, because I am a feeling a lot of people are familiar with this, and we have a lot more online, and you can learn more, but I'll kind of highlight number 2 here because it's what I was just saying. The traditional approach, we've really tried to like encourage people, be safe, be safe, be safe, right? And how do we get them to be safe? Really what we're doing with Vision Zero and the safe system approach is very significantly different. We're actually acknowledging people are going to mess up, whether that is an honest mistake. The sun was in my eyes while I was driving. It was an honest mistake, or really bad decision, right? Bad judgment. Maybe one is driving drunk. People make mistakes. So we can't perfect human behavior. We can do our best, but we really want to kind of integrate this human failing into the approach and go down a couple, and you'll see that's the systems approach. So everything I'm going to talk about today is very focused on how do we're not going to perfect the systems, but how do we make the systems more forgiving? So I really like to put it this way. Shifting to a safe systems approach is less about new technical solutions and strategies. Hey, God bless if there are, and I know there are, and actually I think Hans and Jesse can speak more to, new tools coming online or new approaches. As engineers and planners, they know these things way better than I as a rabble rouser. But along with this technical solutions and strategies, the bigger part, what we really, really need to be leaning into and where we see more progress is when we're really focusing on building the political and public will for change and focusing on those upstream issues, like I just mentioned. So again, not staying at that level of, hey, everybody, be your best self and be careful. Yes, we do want people to be careful, and most people are, but how are we really focusing upstream? If you haven't read it yet, this is a great New York Times article. Google it. It's a little bit about why the US, frankly, is far behind other similar high-income nations. And it's not just that we are worse drivers or worse walkers or worse bicyclists. It's actually very much to do with the systems we've put in place. I won't go into that, but it's a great article. So let me zoom along here. We have a lot on our website. I won't get into it, but kind of what the components are. I shared this not because I think you can read this whole thing. I know that's not legible, but all of it. But you'll see that most of the dot or boxes here are kind of the softer stuff. And by that, I mean, it's not about like what engineering solution works. It's a lot about, if you look at the top, political commitment, multidisciplinary leadership. And I know we want to talk about that. Cooperation and collaboration, transparency. It's a lot of the how do we do things, not just the what we do. So kind of why does this matter? I think with this growth of interest and you all, everybody here is, I think in a city where they've, embraced Vision Zero, it really is an opportunity to set that ambitious, very audacious goal and to push ourselves to think differently, to plan differently, and really plan for different outcomes. So I'm going to walk through these very quickly. I'm going to kind of pause on number 5. So I'm going to move kind of quickly and really talk a little bit about more about the core strategies. So building a safe system foundation. You all have an action plan. I think there's plans to update it if I understand correctly. Really thinking about what are the most important pieces. It's reducing speeds. It's making sure that we understand when people crash, and we want to try and prevent crashes, but there will be crashes. People are fallible, right? They're going to make mistakes. How do we build our street design, our safe streets, and reduce speed limits? And not just speed limits, but speeds overall. And I know Hans has had great success with this, so that we're preventing fatal and severe crashes. A lot online about that. Number 2, I want to come back to this in our discussion, but really important is that critical collaboration and getting commitments from key leaders and partners. And this is a photo from Hoboken. I highlight Hoboken, New Jersey. As you probably know, they're one of the few bigger cities, let's call it, decent sized cities that has had 0 traffic deaths for several years now. I think in Hoboken, it's up to 7 years without any traffic deaths. This is the mayor signing a resolution of some sort. But I want to come back to this more, but this collaboration, really making sure this should not all fall on the shoulders of a few planners or engineers or a few advocates, obviously. It's really got to be your mayors, your city council members, your public health, your whole transportation team, your police department, your school district. And again, I know Hans has great stories to share from San Jose. Prioritization, again, a lot online with this, but you really want to think about, okay, where are we prioritizing? Where are we thinking about high injury network, but also equity emphasis? And this is, I think, a great example of prioritization, not just doing what I call the whack-a-mole, like where was our last terrible crash? Let's put all our energy there. Yes, you do need to respond to to the things that are happening, but we really want to be more proactive. And again, Hans is going to have some great examples where we're thinking, if we know we've had a problem with high speeds in these 3 locations, let's try and think of what our approach is there. But let's just draw back and look at the whole city. If we know that there's 6 other locations that have the exact same or very similar design as those 3 locations, why don't we proactively go fix those other 6? We don't need to wait till someone's hurt there, right? So how do we proactively address those? And I'm sharing this was from Seattle. Hopefully you can see what they did. Quick version is they reduced speeds on 70% of their arterials in 1 year. I want to really emphasize, not a small city, right? It's a big city. They did this massive amount of work. I'm sure it took some time to plan it, but they did this work in a year. And you really see it's that 2020 year where the green, that big line, is showing you 25-mile-per-hour speed limits on their arterials. So as you can see, they had a lot more 30-mile-per-hour, and then they went to a lot more 25-mile-per-hour. Systematically, it wasn't just on the 5 hotspots or 10 hotspots. It was on 70% of their arterials. They have plans to keep going, but really impressive. Similarly, this is showing Seattle and their leading pedestrian intervals or pedestrian first intersections. You can see they were doing a few or a dozen or so a year. And then in those more recent years, really increased. So in this last 4 years, 50% coverage citywide. And it's really important to think, how are we not just chasing the hot spots, but getting ahead and proactively addressing problems before they really come up? So I won't talk too much about this either, but maybe we can get in the discussion around equity. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, it is true that in this country, we have very disproportionate impacts, safety impacts on particularly communities of color, and I will say low-income communities, particularly living in areas where the design, often the street design and the safety options are not as strong. So we really need to think about, there's some great work happening in Oakland. Not going to go through that either because of just quick time. And I want to give a couple examples here of road design and speed strategies. Let me jump ahead here. A great project in Ojai, California. You guys probably know in Southern California, this is a before and after shot. This is a state arterial. I emphasize that because we all probably know it's, however hard it is to do work on your city roads, it's even harder if you now want to do that change on the state road. And I won't get into all the changes they did, but this is a lot of paint. It's not a massive construction project. It certainly took planning, but they reduced the number of lanes. They added some bike lanes. You can see hopefully on the before or in the after of paint separated bike lanes, but this is mostly paint and signage. And they did a really great job. I won't read all these, but really impressive safety results so far on a state road. I'm going to laud San Francisco a little bit. We'll share. I'm happy to share these slides, by the way, because I know I'm going fast. But they looked at their performance on specific streets. So this is not citywide, but on these streets on the left, you see it's a very diverse list of streets. They did different things. You can read a lot more online. Again, happy to share the link. But what they saw overall on the streets, they made physical design changes. And again, it's a mix of things here. They saw overall collisions decrease by 18%. I won't go through all these, but bike volumes up, 85%, vehicle speeds down, but vehicle travel time, second from the bottom, vehicle travel time only increased by 50 seconds on average. I just want to point out that they saw a real reduction in or improvement in safety, but not a massive increase in travel time for those driving. So I think that really gets at a lot of kind of what people's fears are. I know I'm going over, so I'm going to just speed through and show these images and then share the slides with folks. But San Francisco doing a great job. They're reducing speeds and adding no turn on red throughout the Tenderloin, a very dense, probably folks know, neighborhood, a lot of arterials. They're also doing a lot of great work citywide. They're reducing speeds on commercial corridors to 20 miles per hour. And you can see why that makes such a big difference. You have a obviously, much greater ability to not be killed in a slower speed crash. And And I also want to recommend, this is Sacramento. Check them out. They've been going to school zones, 20 miles per hour in all their school zones. So you can see the 115 schools, 225 streets. Again, it's a very systemic approach. It's not just piece by piece. I'm going to skip ahead here and jump ahead to really how important the last one is: performance metrics. How are you really sharing out? Hey, here's what we're doing. You know, as an advocate, I'll say I will probably look at this and recognize it's not enough. We need more. We need to move faster, and we do. But it's really important to be able to show progress and where you're working. And there's maps that go along with this for San Francisco, and really be able to show folks what are you working on and what are the results, as I showed earlier. I'm going to save this to talk more about in our discussion. Sorry to go so fast, but I want to get on to Hans and Jesse. I'm now going to introduce Hans Larson from Fremont, California, right across the bay there. And Hans, as Diana said, is the director in Fremont's Department of Public Works and oversees all the good transportation and safety work. I'm going to stop sharing, sorry, and pass it over to Hans to hear his great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah, and good afternoon to Silicon Valley Bike Coalition. I'm trying to get my slides up here. I think hopefully those are visible to you all. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I know we've got a lot of material to cover, so I'm just going to keep this moving quickly. I'm going to just tell you sort of what Fremont's story has been. So we are one of the early adopters of the Vision Zero program within the first 10 cities within the country. And so we adopted Vision Zero Action Plan in 2016. We renewed it 5 years later. And we have implemented in a very aggressive and systemic way, you know, the best practices of Vision Zero, and have been recognized nationally for the things we've accomplished. So I'll give you kind of an overview of what we've done. So in the first 5 years of our program, from 2015 to 2020, we saw a 40% reduction in major crashes, which is fatal crashes, as well as severe injury. You can see the numbers there. We find ourselves about 20% of the national average in terms of traffic fatality rate, much less than the state average, and we're about a third of the Bay Area average. So we feel that we're doing something right, and happy to share with you what that is. But you know, we've got more work to do, and we can look at other places sort of outside the U.S. for models of how we can continue to improve to get towards zero. Many of the things that we've done are nothing really special or unique, but it's just a very focused effort and a systemic effort to implement the best practices of safe street design for all ages, abilities, and all travel modes. And you can see kind of the cross-section of the different things that we've done there. I would emphasize, as Leah mentioned, you know, one of the key things is reducing the overall speed on your roadways is one of the most successful things that you can do. And we've done that by radar feedback signs. Probably one of the most successful things is actually through road diets, where we can get rid of lanes that we don't need, and then adopting a 10-foot travel lane width that we are implementing kind of throughout our city, and implement it with routine pavement maintenance. So all of our lanes are getting narrowed, which means we've got more space for bike lanes, for buffers. And then we also narrow our intersections so that vehicles are traveling at a slower speed when they're making their turns. Visibility is really important through daylighting and enhanced street lighting. So we completely retrofitted our entire city within the first 2 years, from orange street lights to bright white LED lights. And then notably, we have really gone all in with protected bike lanes and intersections. And we recently just completed our 18th permanent protected intersection with a ribbon cutting ceremony just a month ago. One of the things that we've noticed, though, is as we've continued to do a lot of work with street design, is we're beginning to find that it's harder to find street design solutions to the crashes that we're having. And there has been a notable change in just kind of travel behavior or social conditions, which are becoming a much bigger factor in trying to, continue to improve. When we started Vision Zero, we could identify like 2/3 of the issues we felt could be improved with better street design. As we implemented that in a really systemic way, what we were finding is that things such as the increase in homelessness, reckless driving, and more intoxication, sort of less police presence out there and dealing with sort of these behavioral type of issues, that those have become sort of more a dominant issue for us. But, as engineers or in transportation or in public works or as a city that's committed to Vision Zero, we don't use that as an excuse to say, oh, that's somebody else's problem. We work with partners, social service agencies. We kind of reconnect with the police department to look at what we can do with these other issues that are sort of outside of road design in order to continue to make improvements. I want to sort of focus on, I think, probably the sort of 3 areas in which, we have, achieved what we've done through partnerships. And these are our police department, our school district, and then getting as much work done with our in-house maintenance staff. And I'll just highlight what some of those are. I do a lot of work in talking with folks that are involved with Vision Zero, and I think Fremont is very unique in that it has a really progressive, proactive police department that really takes traffic safety as an important part of public safety. So our police department recognizes there are more people injured or die within our city from traffic crashes than through gun violence. And so they take traffic safety as an important objective to overall public safety. We have a great relationship in terms of data sharing. We literally get real-time information on major crashes and work to do what we can through communications and engineering and enforcement to address these as partners. Our engineers and our police department meet on a monthly basis. We've been doing that for 10 years. And so it just really creates a culture within the organization of where are we at? What can we do next? How do we continue to improve? Our police department isn't out giving tickets. If they stop people, it's generally to do education, but they view the biggest value of the stop is all the people that pass by that see somebody got stopped, that the city's paying attention, but not necessarily giving a ticket. That can have sort of financial issues to people, but it's really just to send a message that, we're watching out for and want to encourage, good safe behavior. The other big partnership we have is with our school district. Fremont, I think, is also fairly unique. When I was in San Jose, I think, we had 13 different school districts. It's hard to work with them all. Fremont, as one city, has one school district. And when we started our Vision Zero program, our school district wanted to be part of it. And we integrated Vision Zero with a Safe Routes to School program where we collectively did safety plans for all 40 of our schools. That resulted in 40 studies. We had about 400 recommendations that came out of that. And then we were committed to delivering those over a 4-year period. And the fact that our city council and the school board meet together every quarter to talk about items of shared interest and Vision Zero and safety and getting more kids to walk and bike to school and how they're interrelated was a very important political goal between our 2 agencies, and sort of kept safety and complete streets and mode shift sort of as the top of the agenda. And it helped our city council sort of get away from a lot of complaints that they heard about, streets and lanes are getting narrow and they don't like changes. But when you reconnect with folks that are involved with children and schools and get the positive reinforcement of that work, it's really helped us, to be able to continue to move forward with a robust program. And then our internal partners or staff within maintenance. We prioritize their work from doing routine maintenance to delivering quick build projects that could improve our safety outcomes. And through that effort, we were able to deliver just a massive amount of work in a short period of time. And then even our contractual street maintenance work, we used every opportunity to resurface a street as an opportunity to redesign the street to be more safe and complete. So those are examples of intersection road diets done with paint and posts. This is actually an example where we had private development come in and make this permanent. So you can do a lot of work with very inexpensive materials and then work to make them look permanent and pretty later. Other partnerships we have with public health, Kaiser Permanente helped us with safety education grants and banners. Bike Fremont and Bike East Bay are our main partners in advocacy, and they help celebrate new projects that we do. And anytime we heard from somebody from the community that wanted to be part of our program, we found a way for them to participate in some way, including involve volunteers from our scouting organizations. And so that's a quick peek at our story. Happy to participate in the Q&A and discussion, and I'll turn it over to Jesse.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Mintz-Roth, and I'm the Vision Zero Manager for the City of San Jose. And thank you to SVBC for having me. So I tried to put this together. There's a bunch of just sort of new slides for me, so I hope that they all work together. I wanted to give a quick introduction to the topic in San Jose so you can see the San Jose traffic fatality trend. Why did the city adopt Vision Zero? Is in the first, basically from 2012 to 2015, the city's traffic fatality numbers doubled. And in 2015, San Jose adopted Vision Zero. In the time period since then, pedestrians are really worth pointing out. They have been the most vulnerable road user nearly every year since 2013. They're in the yellow line. And by comparison, since it's relevant to talk about at a bicycle coalition, the orange line is bicycle fatalities is significantly lower. And in the most recent year, the traffic fatality number had gone up in 2015 to 60, and we hit that number in 2015, 2019, and 2021, and it peaked in 2022. In 2023, we've seen a 25% reduction, and in 2024, the numbers are very similar to 2023. So I was asked to talk about success stories, and so I'm going to take us through a time sequence. The city's first quick build project was called Better Bikeways, and it redesigned the streets with these facilities that you can see, like shortening crossing distances for pedestrians and building so-called quick build is a faster and cheaper materials such as this. And this is an example of a protected intersection. It was built in 2018. And the project manager was Peter Bennett. And there was an increase in bike trips of 38% after this was built, sort of 2019 compared to 2018. And 14 of 19 locations surveyed saw the increase. Let's see, oops, sorry, we skipped a slide. Okay. I think we're having fun here with my slides. Okay. So in the last few years, we have had 9 Vision Zero corridor redesigns. And this is an example of Center Road, where the street changed with a whole number of times. And after the redesign, There was a consistent number of lanes throughout and a buffered bike lane as well. Or a similar thing with Hillsdale shown on the right. And in the center is the list of the corridors, but I won't read them all since I have a lot of slides. Slow Down San Jose is a speed reduction safety campaign that we did in 2023 and that we continue to push out. It's in 3 languages. It was on billboards, and it was on social media, and we have a lot of media that we continue to distribute. VTA used this art and also did a related looking campaign that was more bicycle and ped safety centric. Some of our other successes is that we worked with other California cities to pass legislation in 2021, AB 43, which created more tools to reduce posted speed limits, and in 2023, AB 645, which allows 6 California cities to pilot speed safety systems for up to 5 years. In the last few years, we've won a lot of money in safety grants. Most of them are for capital projects, but some of the really great callouts that are recent are 2 different times we have won the US DOT Safe Streets for All grant, now totaling about $26 million. The one Bay Area grant, or called OBAG, about $39 million, and also different sources of funds for Center Road, about $14 million, just as call outs. Also, I believe Leah mentioned leading pedestrian intervals. Last year, we installed 848 of them, and they give pedestrians at least 4 seconds of advance time to start crossing the street before vehicles going the same direction with a turning conflict would begin turning into that same conflict area. Just to talk about the grants, I think Gina is actually here, and she's pictured here in this press conference, which we had after winning Safe Streets for All in December 2023. And that was an amazing moment for the program to be able to redesign this intersection that we really wanted to work with her on. She's our very, very engaged advocate. We really thank her for all of the attention she has given to this topic. That grant allowed the redesign of the city's 4 highest fatal and severe injury intersections, one of which is also in an intersection that's owned by the Santa Clara County Department of Roads and Airports. So we partnered with them to apply for this grant. And so this will be one of the things that we work on in the next few years. The other win for Safe Streets for All that was announced in May 2024 is a grant to fund the speed camera program that will begin in 2025. The city is allowed to have up to 33 cameras, and this particular grant, based on it, basically it's going to fund most of it, so 56 months out of 60. Challenges for advancing Vision Zero goals is a topic that Diana wanted me to speak to. And so these are some of which are specific to San Jose, and some of them are more high level, may be a little bit redundant of things that Leah said. But funding and the high cost of redesigning streets, San Jose is only, even though San Jose has had Vision Zero since 2015, it's only had city funding for Vision Zero since the 2020 action plan passed in February 2020. And that action plan changes the program's focus to quick build projects, which are faster and more affordable. A lot of the money that we've won is for capital projects, and capital projects are expensive and take about 5 years to build. And we're lucky to have won about $100 million for that type of project. But capital projects are very expensive here. We've been studying their prices, and they seem to be higher, more expensive in San Jose than many pure West Coast cities. And so part of our 2020 action plan was Walk Safe San Jose, the pedestrian safety plan. And as part of that, we interviewed other cities that are peer cities to try and identify some strategies to reduce some of our capital project costs. High-speed roadways and also speeding. So speeding is the top known violation that leading to fatal and severe injuries in San Jose. Over 80% of fatalities occur on roadways that have a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour or above. But speeding is not perceived to be a city street problem. It's perceived to be a freeway problem. And so as part of our messaging campaign that I mentioned, Slow Down San Jose, we had to come up with a tagline, which I thought was clever: speed limits save lives, to try to bridge that issue that speed limits, wherever you find them, whether they're on city streets or elsewhere, are something that you should follow closely. I think that the biggest probably impact that we'll see in this area is the speed camera program, hopefully, when it goes online next year. And only 6 cities, though, are allowed to have it. San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland are the 3 in the Bay Area. Pedestrian safety needs, more advocates. I wanted to bring this up again in the bicycle forum, that people killed while walking are the most vulnerable by street user type. In a 10-year period, traffic fatalities doubled and pedestrian fatalities tripled. If you look at the last 5 years, we have 132 people who were killed while walking in San Jose. First 34, oops, that was supposed to be biking, killed while biking. And so the biking fatality numbers are really like a fourth of the pedestrian ones. I mentioned some of the same topics that Leah mentions. She talked about the New York Times article. There's also a great New York Times daily podcast that covers one of the recent New York Times articles, which is from January 2024. Some of the other interesting things that are very local, well, let me start with national. National, one of the things that has grown, that has led towards the increase in pedestrian fatalities in the country is smartphones and generally distraction. They start around 2008, and they are thought to be the reason that so many cities' traffic fatality numbers went up between, for example, 2012 or 2010 and 2015. Heavy vehicle adoption is another one, and it's typically SUVs that get discussed here, but actually something that's worth mentioning in the South Bay is that San Jose metro area leads the US in electric vehicle adoption, and electric vehicles are heavier, about 30% heavier. So that's kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind. Also, the Vision Zero corridors in San Jose are very car-centric. They tend to be about 100 feet wide with 3 lanes in each direction and a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour or above, and have a long distance between controlled crosswalks. So there is quite a lot of work to be done in terms of redesigning them. And another thing that I identify working in this field is that street safety advocacy organizations in California tend to be thematically divided between bicycle advocacy and pedestrian advocacy. And, I don't know, I guess I would like to not see that as much. But one of the great organizations to mention is Families for Safe Streets. This is an organization whose membership are people whose family members have been victims of traffic violence. The Bay Area has a chapter which is based in San Francisco, and it is far from here. And in our 2020 action plan, we tried to seed fund, or at least advocate for seed funding of the South Bay chapter. And we did apply to a grant, and we didn't get that grant. But I think it's a great idea for the future. So I'll skip this one about the electric vehicles, but for those of you who might know, I'm giving another presentation tomorrow about the 2025-2029 Vision Zero Action Plan. This is the timeline for it. If you come to my presentation tomorrow, I'm sort of going to rush through this slide because I'm a little over time. The last topic that Diana wanted me to talk about was speed data analysis. This is the locations on the left of top traffic fatalities in San Jose, and on the right of speed related crashes. And you can see they're not exactly the same, but at this sort of data analysis of this topic is something that we're very focused on doing right now as part of the design of the speed camera program. And so we need to find locations that meet the exact criteria of AB 645 in order to basically nominate locations. And so locations that are more strongly on the right side of this slide are more likely for that. Another slide that I have on this is here. You can see injuries that are caused by speeding are represented on the left by darker, heavier lines. And on the right, fatal and severe injuries caused by speeding are on the right side of this slide. So I'm over time, and I think what I'm going to do is maybe skip that slide and just go to my thank you slide. If you'd like to come to my future presentations, tomorrow at the San Jose Vision Zero Task Force, we're going to be talking about the new Vision Zero Action Plan for 2025 to 2029. And also something that Hans mentioned is the increase in people experiencing homelessness as traffic fatalities. We did a 5-year data study on that, and we'll be presenting that in a Federal Highway Administration convened equity webinar in September. So the link for that when we distribute slides is below.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Folks hear me okay? Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Jesse. This is Leah again. Hi, everybody. I've been asked to facilitate questions and some discussion, and want to do that now. I want to acknowledge that we are a little over time, and not over yet, but we only have 10, 11 minutes on our official time. So I'm wondering if folks are willing to stay on another 10 minutes after that. I'll kind of look to Hans and Jesse, if you'd be willing to stay on as panelists, go a little bit longer. Thank you. I know I can. Diana, hopefully that's okay. So let's jump right into questions. You know, I'm really eager. I'm seeing a lot in here. I'm going to try and just be judicious with a couple, knowing we won't get to them all. And I know I want to ask a couple questions that seem to be bubbling up kind of thematically. But let me start with the most recent one. Hans, in Fremont, someone asking, Chris is asking, have the improvements led to meaningful changes in active transportation, probably increases in active transportation mode share? And then can you maybe share what you think of kind of which strategies you think have been the most bang for the buck? You talked about a lot of things. What would be kind of you think the most impactful safety-wise? Can I ask you those two at first?
Sure. Yeah, and I would just sort of comment that our Vision Zero safety program is really blended with mode shift goals. So we're trying to increase safety. We're trying to create a city where more people are walking and biking, taking transit, and less driving. So there is a relationship there. Yeah, we do have data that shows where we've improved safety in certain corridors for people walking and biking, that more people are doing that. In terms of bang for the buck, you know, I think Fremont had very wide, I mean, our lanes were 12 to 14 feet wide, bigger than what you have on a freeway. Lots of room to be distracted and drive crazy. So when we went to 10-foot lanes, it really noticeably slowed down traffic speeds. We were able to change speed limits because the operating speed had changed. And so that was a big move for us. I think the other big thing is similar to what Jesse said with San Jose streets, a lot of arterial roads that don't have enough places for pedestrians to safely get across. And so by introducing more crossing locations with hawk signals or flashing beacons, it really improved and has reduced the number of pedestrian fatalities significantly due to flashing beacons. That's one of the things that we think has been the best bang for the buck.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Hans. And I'm going to add on a piece to that. I think Fremont is one of the better examples I've seen in the country of scaling things like I mentioned, I know I emphasize that a lot, you know, moving beyond the kind of reactive, we got to kind of start with the problems we see as most urgent and address them. My impression is, tell me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that, you know, you guys have gone beyond the kind of like whack-a-mole of problems and really said, okay, how are we narrowing those lanes or reducing those speed limits or doing this blank, blank, blank before we necessarily see a problem there, because we recognize that is needed, right? That the design is similar to something where there is a problem. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how does a city get to that point? Because I'll say even in like really big cities, you know, talk to folks in Stockholm where they've been doing Vision Zero for 30 years, you know, they acknowledge you start here. You start with recognizing the worst problems and addressing them. But pretty soon you need to go into that more proactive, systemic approach. So I'd love to ask you a little bit, maybe to help share how does one do that, and what maybe advice would you have for other cities?
Yeah, I think, you know, that you do your data analysis and, you know, you have your locations that are hotspots or recent fatalities. But I think for us, it was easy to conclude is that, you know, that street without a safe place for people to get across a busy arterial, you know, we started our program, you know, knowing that we had like 40 locations where we needed to just improve the pedestrian crossing experience. And we didn't have the money or time to wait for doing flashing beacons everywhere. You know, we're up to about 30 now, but we initially, using Quick Build, we actually just painted enhanced crosswalks, put in signs, and then literally placed state law yield to pedestrian markers in between the lanes. So we needed people to pay attention. There's a crosswalk here. And I think people slowed down, I think not because they wanted to pay attention to safe crossing. They didn't want to scratch the side of their car. It's literally what it came down to. But whatever works. And I think a lot of it is you got to put stuff out there in the roadway that slows people down physically in order to get a change. And so we did a lot of these things as an interim measure. And then when we have the resources, you know, we make it permanent with other sort of more, you know, traditional safety measures. But I think we started early with our streets are, you know, not multimodal, and we had a systemic problem, and we kind of took that on really just from the beginning of our Vision Zero program. I just one other quick point is I think that a lot of cities, I see they adopt a policy and do a plan, but then we got to wait for, you know, we need more staff or we need more money. I think what was unique to Fremont is we just dove into it because we had the political support, and we realized, and this is something I learned from New York City, is that, you know, when you have the stars are aligned, move as fast as you can, and because you're going to hit backlash. And the more you can do before you get the backlash, and if you can show that you delivered results, that sort of helps stem, you know, the backlash. If you're moving too slow and not making progress, it's hard to be able to continue doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm definitely seeing some questions in the comments or in the question box that talk a lot about, you know, I think maybe a theme of how do we get past the pushback, and you kind of segue there for a second. The challenges, every single city, none of us on this call are special in this case. By that, I mean, every single city, there are going to be people who push back against the change, whether we call them NIMBYs, you know, not in my backyard types, or some other version. There's all sorts. There's going to be people, no matter how good a project is. And even if you're leading with safety, which I hope we are in many cases, you're going to have people push back because they don't want the change. I'm going to ask a question that is maybe to both of you, and I'll start with you, Jesse, if I could. Given that, so I want to maybe take off the table the fact that, like, we're not going to solve that here. You know, we're not going to change people's nature to be, you know, not pushing back against change. It will happen. Jesse, what do you think San Jose will benefit from most? What do you think, you know, the city kind of needs most to prove what works and scale it? to make more progress with kind of what we know?
Well, one of the things that we just started doing is that we hired a person to just focus on before and after studies. And so we're excited to begin basically putting out the sort of effect, how projects are evaluated and how projects are successful or could be improved. So I think that that's going to be a really useful tool for, us internally to understand not just, what the studies say, but what actually works here. And then furthermore, what could be tweaked to be more impactful. And then conversely for, all the people that we work with in a project, like, for example, you were just saying that none of us are, immune from the pushback. So too, it's the case for us, the designers, but it's also the case for like our elected officials that work with us. They would like to be able to talk also about the successes or sort of needs to improve projects. So I would say that that's the thing I'm most excited about in that area at the moment.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Hans, any thoughts on that?
So
Or
dealing with the
yeah.
pushback, I mean, a couple things, well, probably recently, I think Fremont's been quite aggressive in terms of its approach to changing street design, and it's created pushback. I think our city council has been unanimous in support of our safety objectives, and I credit their ability to stay with it is through the regular coordination with the school district. And so the school district is very focused on child safety and safety, and they provide our city council with regular positive feedback on the direction. So I think they're able to, manage through the change process and pushback. But we've gone more recently with a lot of protected bikeways and intersections, and we're taking away the fast free running right turns and essentially preventing sort of right turns on red, which has created another set of pushback. And we actually polled the community on what do they think about the city's safety program, because the council was getting a lot of complaints about we're just going too far too fast. And the results were that 50% of and these were statistically valid surveys of the population, liked that we were taking a safety first approach. But we did have 22% who felt that designing for streets for speed for drivers was a more important objective, even if people are going to be killed or severely injured. So we do have pretty 22% out there, and they're the ones on social media. But I think the fact that and I was pleased to get those numbers that we had 50% that said safety first. And so that's helped the council have a perspective that more people are in favor of safety as opposed to having streets be faster. And that has allowed us, to continue to do, I think the bold work that we're doing. You can easily get overwhelmed by the sort of vocal minority or people who don't want change. And so if there's a political question on it, poll your community and find out where they're at and cross your fingers and hope you get the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a big piece of like show, don't tell. I mean, there's a certain amount of telling because you can't show everything, but I think a big positive of the quick builds is people can see something. Not everyone's going to like it, but you can at least now talk about something real versus theory, right? Versus a proposal. So those quick builds can be so helpful to get something on the ground and talk about a real thing. I'd love to talk a little bit about that leadership. That's a huge question. Leadership, interagency collaboration, the importance, Hans, I think it's significant that you emphasized those agency collaborations a lot. And I think a lot of cities, really look to those, the importance of that collaboration. This, like I said, this is not just a transportation department problem. Transportation is is, road safety is spread amongst many things. So I really want to, ask you, Jesse, and I want to ask, I don't want to put you in a hot seat because there's only probably so much you can say about this, but I want to acknowledge, I've read online a little bit that there's a plan to, I guess, dissolve or change the task force. I guess I want to just wonder a little bit about what do you think, as much as you can say, are the best ways to foster that cross-agency collaboration? Because I would say, the more opportunity there is for that, the more regular opportunity, the less, in some ways, kind of formal that is. I don't mean totally informal, but, thinking about everything going through a city council committee meeting, that's going to be a lot of formality and structure, versus having more, informal collaborative discussions, say once every month or something. So I guess maybe just explain a little bit to folks what your understanding is, and if there's any advice you can share for people maybe that are concerned about that.
Yeah. Well, the task force was created in 2020, and it will have had in its life, it will have been around for 5 years and had 14 meetings by the time it ends. I mean, in a sense, first off, this is not my idea, so I'm basically, insofar as being on the hot seat here, like, I'm, it's true, it is sort of a hot seat place to be. I think the task force has been pretty successful, though, in sort of creating really strong, well, we work with a lot of entities in the city and county that we never worked with before the task force, and it's been really great for fostering relationships that I think we now as a department have, which I think is something that is certainly helped by the task force, but also I think we'll be able to lay out our expectations for the way that we want them to continue in the next Vision Zero action plan that we're writing right now. So one of the big themes of I'm just previewing what will be in that presentation tomorrow, but will be like, how do you transition from a task force to a new accountability and frequency framework? And in it, can you say, we want to say that we expect to work with our various partners that we've created in the task force as we go forward. So one of the dashboards actually that was in Leah's slides about, there was a dashboard that San Francisco MTA uses for its accountability of different types of projects it builds, is one that we're also looking to as a precedent, and could also be used to cross with our partners, whether they're data sharing partners or partners who work together. Like one of the really sort of interesting ones to me has been people experiencing homelessness. It's a sort of not novel topic, but a growing topic, and it's one that is not traditionally a DOT topic. And so, how do we work with our partners, and who are our partners, and how can we, it feels a little bit like creating a new wheel. And so, the partners there are the housing department and parks department and an entity that San Jose has called Beautify SJ, which is sort of parks related. And there are a lot of other, like there's nonprofits, there's vendors that work for the city and the county. As we go forward, we are really focused on vulnerable road users, but they're a non-traditional vulnerable road user. And I think it's really important to sort of acknowledge how to learn what they do, because so many cities and entities in the whole country, but particularly the west side of the country, have a lot of what's called unsheltered homelessness. I mean, I got to read about this topic anew. Anyway, I could talk about it for a long time, but it's really interesting to think about how we can use the Vision Zero action plan to you know, create expectations of how we work with our new partners going forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll just say, you know, looking around the nation, there's no perfect secret recipe, right? I mean, there's no perfect, you know, recipe that fits every city the same, right? New York City is different than San Jose and Orlando and Charlotte and Austin, Texas. But I will say from my experience of working with a lot of cities, it is having that system of regular collaboration, really clear accountability measures, transparency for people who care, like folks on this call, but also the general public and, you know, everybody. You know, it does seem like that these elements are really important. And yeah, maybe I'll ask a question of you both. You know, if you're an advocate, somebody who cares about safety, who's not in the public sector themselves, you know, what do you think they should be kind of maybe asking for or pushing for or advocating for in terms of kind of the next phase? And I guess partly, I mean, less on the technical side and more on the engagement, community input, collaboration, transparency, you know, all of that soft stuff that really, really is important though, but it's not the how, it's kind of, or it's not the what we do, but kind of the how we do it. Yeah, maybe Jesse, you're nodding your head. Maybe I'll go back and ask you, yeah, you know, what do you think is going to be helpful to keep that? Well, I would say not even keep it strong, to strengthen it, to improve on it.
I mean, I personally love engaged advocates. So, you know, I think it, and actually we've mentioned New York City a few times. I used to work there, and like advocates, I'd say, are very engaged there. And, you know, here we don't quite have as many yet, although a lot of the ones we do have are in this room. So it's great to see you. And so, you know, I'd say, yeah, it would be great to hear from you more, to like have your, you know, to hear your voice in public meetings when you can make them. I know they're not always at times that people can make, but to, you know, definitely send us comments about things, because I think we do, you know, take them seriously, and like hearing what people have to say. So you know, even though the task force won't be there, I do feel like there are a lot of opportunities to reach out to us. So please do, and come to our city council meetings, for example, too.
Hans, any advice on that, kind of to add to that? Again, anything that you'd suggest for folks who care about this and
Yeah.
energy in?
I think I just kind of share just I don't know, some thoughts on it. I think, you know, we kind of engage sort of the advocates in Fremont on our program through the quarterly meetings of we have a mobility commission, and so the commission is made up. It's a multimodal commission. So there's two folks that represent people who bike, people who walk, people who take transit, people who drive, and then one person who represents persons with mobility, you know, with disabilities. So we have it purposely created kind of a multimodal perspective as we look at our transportation system. And yeah, they want, you know, to hear sort of what the latest is in terms of crash statistics and understanding what's going on. And so in addition to the members of the Mobility Commission, we have folks that attend the meeting, and regularly attendance from folks from Bike Fremont and others that are interested in a multimodal transportation. So I think it's good to keep them informed as to what's going on. And I think when we started Vision Zero, now almost a decade ago, 2/3 of our fatalities were pedestrians. And, you know, we knew that was a weakness, but now it really, we've had 3 fatalities in Fremont sort of year to date, and all of them are associated with reckless drivers. Just high level speeding, but, you know, one reckless driver ran off the road, hit a pedestrian. It's a pedestrian fatality. The other 2, it was the drivers that killed themselves. And so, understanding kind of where we're at in the issues for the advocates, I think is good for them to know. Oh, Fremont's had 3 fatalities. Most people, would jump to conclusion that, it's bicycles and pedestrians that are involved with it. But when you look at the data, you kind of have a different understanding. But we've really evolved in terms of sort of the character of, the crashes that we have. And so really kind of understanding the data and then, working together between advocates and the city to, focus on the real issues. But I think in terms of, this is, Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, how do we make our bike environment better? For us, it's sort of less about safety projects, but it's about creating a bike infrastructure for all ages and abilities that attracts more people to bike. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I think one of the things that our council hears is we're building all this infrastructure for people walking and biking, but people don't see enough people out walking and biking. And so our message to our advocacy community, one is to have them not just ask for the next project, but also, thank the council for the funding and celebrate the successes so you feel good about it. And so I think that's important. But then also work together to get more people out there walking and biking and showing that, if you build it, they will come. So that's, from our lens here in Fremont, some of the areas of, how we work with advocates and our advice on how you can be more effective.
That's great. Thanks, Hans. I'm going to pull a few more questions from the chat because there's so many. We're not going to get to them all, but I'm going to try and kind of bundle and then wrap up now at 6:30. Hopefully that's okay with folks. If you can stay, appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. I'll wrap up at 6:30 because we know there's breakout groups. So thanks for people's patience. And start with you, Jesse, on this one. Are there or what are some of the most notable changes you hope to make, or maybe you have the power, maybe others do, but what would be the most meaningful changes to some of the kind of processes or things that sometimes slow things down in terms of making changes on the streets and improving safety? I think there's a lot, we all understand, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the world and things take time, of course. Are there certain things that you're really eager to improve on or see other agencies maybe improve on? What would make a big difference?
It's kind of a tough question because I think that and I think it sounds like Fremont have already made what I think is the most obvious change, which is the strategy shift to the quick build style project. I mentioned before that capital projects take a really long time and quick build projects are quicker. But then I suppose there could be a question is, do some cities build quick build faster than other cities? And the answer to that would be yes. And it is interesting to see sometimes when advocates are really like holding their leaders to ask for projects to be delivered faster, if that's a realistic thing. I can't really speak that well for San Jose in this way because I am a more policy role and I am less of an implementer, although in my previous work in New York, I was an implementer. So in that way, I don't know how quickly San Jose could, build projects if really pressed, but I don't feel like we have people who are really asking for that at the moment. So I guess I'm sort of curious as I say this is, could we build them quicker? Maybe. So that kind of timeline might be faster, possibly. I don't know. There are, for what it's worth, like they're not all projects are the same. Some projects are really small. Some projects are really big. Some of the big projects may have more complicated elements. There are certain elements that are impactful, but also tend to be more contentious. The best example of that is the so-called road diet. Road diets are really great, usually for slowing down speeding traffic. And slowing down speeding is good for all modes of safety. And so drivers tend not to be very excited about losing lanes. And so, you know, that type of project might not be one that we could necessarily speed up. But, you know, if it were a more confined type of project, it might be possible. So you know, that could, you know, a smaller type project might be like, you know, upgrading a crosswalk to a high visibility crosswalk, or for leading pedestrian intervals, it was amazing, really amazing to see our signals operations team put in 848 of them in 1 year. I actually was really surprised about that. And so I've been really excited to report to forums like this that they did that, because it's like still surprised about it. But you know, it's really, it makes it feel like signal operation changes like that might be possible to do if we could identify other types of ones that would be relatively inexpensive for them to do. So so I think there are some things that could be done faster.
Great. And there's a couple of questions a little bit about that implementation side. So thank you for clarifying. You're leading more on policy, and obviously it's all very connected, but some folks are asking, you know, kind of where does that implementation piece kind of live maybe within the agency? And I'll go ahead and say, how can folks maybe be more involved there and let their hopes be known more? Is there any advice there?
Still come to the same place. I'm still the main person who does like this style of engagement. I do more than anyone else. So I think if you are in a forum where my, you know, whole chain of command is present, basically city council, then they will see you advocate for that. So I would just say, I know city council is not super well timed for people who have normal jobs, but that is probably the best place, or the Vision Zero task force, or email us and we can, we have an email address, which I probably should have on my slides, but it's traffic.safety at sanjoseca.gov, and emails that go to that can be forwarded internally. So.
And I will ask, maybe all three of us can add, if you don't mind, add our emails in directly in the group meeting chat, because a few people have asked for that, and I realize that that would be great. Thank you for saying it, but maybe add it into. You know, there's a question about you mentioned kind of quick builds getting done sooner, or construction, I should say, any on the ground projects. Somebody had asked, is there any room for volunteers to be helping with that? You know, mentioned staff capacity. Maybe particularly with quick builds, I think obviously more than like building a bridge or something, but with the quick builds, you know, is there room for volunteer support to make things move a little faster?
I mean, I'd say, you know, there's big liability issues to sort of have volunteers out in the street. I know there's, you know, some efforts that, you know, do that in a managed way. I think we yeah, so in terms of building projects, I think that's challenging. I think we use volunteers more around you know, having a robust Safe Routes to School program and parent volunteers that help drive, organizing walking school buses, and making sure that, you know, there's a safe environment for kind of the morning pickup and drop off. And that's probably the area where we have the greatest use of, you know, volunteer support is around our school program.
Yep. Thank you. Or Jesse, do you want to add anything? Yeah.
No, I mean, I would say that the quick build program is probably not the best place for volunteers, but when I think we are going to be doing some new style of outreach and engagement, which is pop-up demonstration projects. We did a few of them in February, and we're planning to do another batch of them in August and September. And those are where we are demoing what it would be like to do for a day a new kind of street design. So some of the locations we'll be using in the next batch come from the Walk Safe San Jose plan. And we don't have them up online yet, but August, September, I think is when it will happen.
That's great. That's encouraging. And maybe that gets a little bit another question around community engagement. Someone's asking what kind of good processes or protocols are there around community engagement for cities promoting Vision Zero and you know, pushing projects that well, they ask, can prevent community resistance from vetoing the safety projects. I know that's a tough one. There's always going to be, again, there's always going to be some opposition, but maybe getting at the point of back to leadership, how are we helping the leaders, frankly, not have too many excuses to put the brakes on things, because we wouldn't get anything done, right? So is there more that folks can be doing? Is there more, you've alluded to this for sure, Jesse, but like ways to be showing more support for the change, for the engagement? And are the pop-ups an opportunity for that? How could that grow? Any thoughts on that?
Well, one thing is that typically people only write us if they dislike something. So we'd also like if you write us if you like something, and particularly your elected officials, because recently we had a contentious project, which I believe is Saratoga Avenue, and there was a survey put online that we didn't know about in advance, that we would have liked to have known about in advance. And a lot of the input that went to the survey was negative, but then when we read, I believe it was Reddit, all the Reddit comments were positive, and we basically were finding that there was probably a age difference between the people who filled out the elected officials survey and the people who were commenting on Reddit were a lot younger. And we would like, whenever there's that type of thing happening, to hear more from people who are supportive. So because it's better to be able to say that there is a balance, because we know that some people do like the project, but it would be nice to hear from them also.
Absolutely.
I'll just add, in terms of community engagement, I think it's important to do kind of regular updates to your comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So we're doing that now. We used to have separate ones. We're now combining them into a single active transportation plan, and doing a really deep engagement where we're going out and meeting people where they're at, doing intercept surveys along trails, going to schools, meeting with senior groups. And then last fall, we had a series of, walk your neighborhood or do a bike ride with your council member. And so it's a way to get your political leadership out there engaged and hearing from the community and what their issues are with walking and biking, what they'd like to see, and having elected officials participate and notifying it attracts people who want to come. Hey, I get a chance to do a meet and greet with the council member. Online tools are great. We have a kind of a regular community engagement program called My Fremont, where major projects or issues we put out there and survey and ask for input. And we've gotten a lot of input, for our active transportation plan through that forum. And so I think where people, feel like they have ownership or engaged in the plan, and you orient it around a positive thing, is like, how can we make Fremont a better place for walking and biking? What are your issues? What are your ideas? You pull that together, and your council approves it, so that gives you a refreshed kind of platform to continue your work. And just to share kind of an interesting thing is, what we're finding now, that most of the things people want are dealing much more with just basic maintenance and operations. As our bicycle community wants the bike lanes cleaned more frequently. They want us to deal with, trees that are, dropping pine cones or the little spiky balls. The people, want, better sidewalks, within their neighborhood. So sidewalk repair is a, big part of our pedestrian program. So, and then it's keeping delivery, trucks from parking in the bike lanes, and forcing bike riders have to go out in the street. So we're finding in kind of the current round is sort of less around, sort of these big projects, but taking care of more of just, you know, basic O&M. So it's good to, you know, check in regularly and find out what the interests are and how you can continue to make things better.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. We're going to wind down on that. I'm just going to say, I know we went over. Thank you, everybody, for taking time and using your evening time. You know, to the folks on the call who obviously care a lot because you're here on your own time too, and the advocates here, you know, none of the change happens without the pushing, right? The advocacy is critical. And I think you guys have said this in so many great ways, eloquent ways. But, you know, just to acknowledge too that, you know, everybody's generally wanting safer conditions, right? Partly to say, hey, it is going to take change though. Let's not dance around that, right? Let's not pretend that we can have, you know, the exact same, you know, everything we have today, but also have safer conditions. You know, for the past century, we've built such environments that we have the reality we have today. It's not anyone's fault sitting in this room. It's not any city staffer's fault, but we do have opportunity now to make change. I think we're seeing, you know, such promise for political support. So really to frankly hold your electeds accountable, remind them it can be different, that we are seeing changes in places and that, you know, it is their job ultimately to protect public safety, whether somebody's driving, biking, walking, even if there's pushback to the change, there's always going to be pushback to change, right? So really, I think it's our jobs to help embolden and remind those decision makers, frankly, to do the right thing. And I will hand it back to Diana now and say thanks so much.
Thank you, Leah. Ready? So I'm going to try to get us right back up to speed really quickly. Just want to let everyone know, see my slide, how we'll be going into our breakout rooms. They are open and available now. I also want to let everyone know about our upcoming event, which is our Bike Summit. It's going to be on August 29th. If you haven't registered, please do so now. The early bird registration is only until the 30th, which means this is our discount time right here. With that said, I'm going to be opening all the rooms. Jesse, Hans, and Leah, if you haven't already, if you could put your contact information into the chat. For everyone that was participating, I hope you enjoyed it and you found it very educational and informative. This video will also be available on our YouTube page and on our Bikeactivist forum. With that said, I am opening up the breakout rooms for our local teams. If you do not see your city there, please let me know. But with that being said, please feel free to join your room.